senior lawyer Majeed Memon is joining us now on the show. He's also a former MP. He's going to take us through the nuances of what was discussed politically. Meanwhile, the update is that the lawyers are waiting for the bench to assemble, so we will be expecting that decision anytime soon. Very good evening, Mr. Memon, and thank you so much for speaking with us on the show this evening in the middle of this breaking news scenario. We're trying to bring some sense to all of the flow of information coming in. Can you explain to us why the Aghadi government is so intent on postponing this floor test?
Good evening, Tamanna, to all your viewers. It has generated so much of excitement and suspense, hourly or even minute-wise, that the eyes of the whole country are set on the fate of Maharashtra. Now, remember one basic thing, that it is always desirable that the will of the people under the Constitution of India must prevail at all times. And now, in order to ensure as to who should be representing the people of Maharashtra as far as the government of Maharashtra formation is concerned, the current government is shaky because a fraction of major political party which forms the government has broken out. Whole country knows for the past almost 2 weeks, Shinde and company have deserted Shiv Sena, betrayed Shiv Sena, and have called themselves to be a true Shiv Sena in order that they would have their own way out of the original Shiv Sena's whip. Now, what happens constitutionally? What is their identity today? If Shiva Sena does not think that they are our members anymore, or any disqualification process has begun, that would mean that they have lost their identity and they cannot be claiming to be representing the people of their constituencies, and therefore ethically, morally, constitutionally and politically they should not be entitled to vote for confidence or no confidence. That is what the actual position is. But Supreme Court would never come in the way of determination of will of the people through the process of roadshow.
Sir, just some breaking news coming in, which we'd like to tell our viewers about. The Supreme Court has said that the floor test will continue and will be undertaken at 11 a.m. tomorrow, as was scheduled. Mr. Memon, is this essentially the end of the Maha-Vikas Aghadi government, and will Mr. Thackeray have to resign ahead of that floor test?
Well, I think obviously the situation today is such that Shinde and company have never repented. They have never gone back to a Sena fold. And therefore, it is so very obvious that all these Sena, anti-Sena group, that is Shinde group, they may be 16, they may be 39, they may be 46, whatever they are not going to vote in favor of Thackeray government. So the destiny of Thackeray rule has already been sealed. It is bound to fall because it would certainly be short of 145, which is the required number. Now, BJP must be too happy because they have 106 and they have been trying to topple this government all throughout past 2.5 years. We have seen desperation on the part of Devendra Fadnavis. He must be very happy because in addition to his 106, now he got the lot of defected Sena members, and certainly that would mean that it becomes very difficult for Uddhav government to survive.
Interestingly, the bench has also said it is ordering notice on the petitions and that tomorrow's floor test proceedings will be subject to the final outcome of the writ petition. But does anything change as far as the disqualification is concerned once the floor test is put into place? Please stay on with us, Mr. Memon. I'm also joined by political commentator Amitabh Tewari for more on this story. Amitabh, is this pretty much done and dusted? Does it seem unlikely that Uddhav Thackeray will go ahead and actually try and fight it out on the floor of the House?
I mean, as per sources and reports, it is unlikely, but he can brazen it out. I mean, earlier we've seen Yedurappa and H.D. Kumaraswamy using the floor test as an opportunity to make emotional speeches and how he has been wronged and betrayed by his own people. So it is entirely his choice. However, from day one, it was very clear that he does not have the numbers. So instead of taking a conciliatory tone, towards the MLAs, because see, the number is huge. Here it is more than 2/3. So it is his authority over over the legislator party is also in question now, post the floor test. So now he has to take a call. And even if I don't know who are the advisors and who is doing the math, even if these 16 MLAs were disqualified or were barred from voting in the assembly, then also MBA was on a sticky wicket, because this was the entire premise of MVA going to court today and asking for the floor test to be deferred. But there are 51 MLAs, or rather 50 odd MLAs. Even if you remove 16, and even if 34 vote against the government, then also his government would have been in a minority. And he probably realizes this, and probably he might take a call to resign than face humiliation in the floor test.
Mr. Memon, is that the likely outcome? We've seen precedent of that he is unlikely to go through with the floor test. He is likely to resign. And then the larger question of what happens to the Shiv Sena, because remember, Mr. Eknath Shinde has also gone into this claiming that he is the Shiv Sena. If he has most of the MLAs with him, 39 of the MLAs are with him, then he represents the Shiv Sena.
Now, see, let me, Tamanna, tell you one very important fallout of all these events that have taken shape. We respect what the Honorable Supreme Court has said, and therefore now there is no choice. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock in the morning, the fate of MBA government would be decided. And almost all of us know that either Thackeray chooses to resign before the test takes place, because the results are practically known, or he makes a emotional speech. Well, that is not very important. You see, even the fall of the government is not very important. But there is one very important aspect of this matter which all your viewers may please note, and that is that if certain fraction of a political party breaks out, whether they should be encouraged. Now, in this whole exercise and the conclusions drawn by fall of government tomorrow morning, the Shinde group is encouraged, which is, encouraging unethical approach, encouraging defection, encouraging betrayal to the voters, encouraging betrayal to your parent party. Such things in our political morality and constitutional values must be discouraged. So the result of all this exercise and what is going to happen tomorrow that the government falls is only to encourage and promote such elements, which I am sorry is a sad day for Indian democracy.
Many will argue that this is not the first time there has been horse trading of MLAs, that MLAs have switched sides. There was always a grouse after the last elections that the mandate was never in the first place for the Mahavikas Aghadi. The mandate and the votes were asked in the name of a Shiv Sena BJP combination. So have we left the question of political morality at least a long way behind, sir?
No, what Shinde should have done, in my humble suggestion, that Shinde within his party should have prevailed upon his leader, that is Uddhav Thackeray, and the majority of the members who were with him. He could have told them that, look here, let us not damage this half a century old political party. Let us not break ourselves. Let us not also show to our voters who have returned to us in the assembly on Shiv Sena symbol, that bow and arrow symbol. And now, if we break into two, it's a damage much more than the fall of the government. You see, the governments come and governments go. Tomorrow, again, probably one does not know what will happen to the newly installed BJP government. We'll have to wait and watch. But the damage caused to a political party by such misdemeanor on the part of certain betrayal people, certain people's betrayal is, irreparable. And therefore, we must lament more on this political immorality rather than the fall of the government.
All right, let's just cut into some live reactions coming in from various political parties on it. Please stay with us. We'll just take our viewers through all the responses coming in right now.
स्पीकर जब डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन की बात थी, 48 घंटे कम है उनकी सुनवाई सुनने के लिए, सुनवाई आगे तक ले गई थे, 11 जुलाई तक की उनको टाइम दिया गया था. उसी तरह से इसमें भी कोई डेफरमेंट आएगा इसकी उम्मीद थी, या उसको ये करना ये हो रहा था, ऐसी दलीलें की थी. लेकिन अब जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने, ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जो जजमेंट दिया उसको मानना
सर
है।
गवर्नर साइड से जो भी दलील पेश की गई उससे क्या आप लोग नाखुश हुए? गवर्नर ने जिस तरह से कहा था फ्लोर टेस्ट के लिए,
उन्होंने हेड ऑफ द स्टेट करके जो बातें रखी थी उसी को लेके यहाँ पे दलीलें या पिटीशन जो पेश किया गया था, हमको इस बात को बहुत अच्छी तरह से अभिषेक मनु सिंघवी जी ने, कामत जी ने बहुत अच्छी तरह से रखा था, लेकिन जिस तरह से जजमेंट आया उसको तो मानना
नाखुश नजर आ रहे हैं सर आप? नाखुश नजर आ रहे हैं सर?
नाखुश तो ज़रूर नाखुश, यानी जो उम्मीदें थी, क्योंकि एक अब ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो जजमेंट रहता है वो सुप्रीम रहता है। अब इसके ऊपर बयानबाजी
अनिल देसाई
Senior Sena leader Anil Desai are talking about how they are disappointed by the decision, but they respect the decision of the Honorable Supreme Court and they will have to face that floor test tomorrow. The rebel camp will be there in Mumbai tomorrow for that floor test, and that's where that crucial decision will be made. But Amitabh, Tewari, like you've been saying, that decision is pretty much done. It's a formality now. Can we assume that? And then the big question of what happens to the Shiv Sena. Mr. Memon raised that very interesting point that governments come and go, but this this party in itself is now fighting for its identity.
See, the party is fighting for its identity because it has not been, the leadership of Uddhav Thackeray has not been able to convince his leaders why such a decision of aligning with the NCP and the Congress was done. See, we are talking about a betrayal of a mandate, but the betrayal of mandate happened in 2019 because the mandate was for a BJP and Sena government and not for a Sena and NCP and Congress government first. Secondly, as I have told earlier also on a day in this show, that this is a very peculiar case which is going to turn the anti-defection law upside down, because these two-thirds rebel MLAs have not yet defected and they will not defect, going by what their lawyer has claimed in the Supreme Court, that they are the real Shiv Sena. So what we are going to see in Shiv Sena is a protracted long battle for the control of the party. And mind you, the legislative party is a unit of the main party, which is the Shiv Sena, but a legislative party can have its own leader if more than two-thirds or more than 50% of the MLAs have elected Shinde as the leader. Now Shinde will claim to be the
I'll
leader.
just interrupt you
Shiv
for a
Sena.
second. Big news coming in over here that Uddhav Thackeray will be addressing the media, or actually he will be giving a Facebook address at 9:30. That's in about 9 minutes from now. And we will be hearing from Uddhav Thackeray on this. Are we likely to hear a resignation, Mr. Memon? Why would he go through the humiliation of possibly losing a floor test? It would be better to bow out in advance.
It is, of course, Uddhav Thackeray's discretion. You know, whatever course he chooses to adopt, he is at liberty to do so. It all depends upon his sentiments, his feelings, his affection to his party and to his partymen, and of course to his thousands of Sainiks who are still following him. So it depends upon his the way he takes it. But he knows that the fate of the government headed by him
unless somebody advises him that the Supreme Court order is in his favor, just like he's been ill-advised all this time.
What about the condition that has been put, because it was addressed as to whether or not it can be a reversible decision, and the court has said it will be subject to the outcome of the main petition.
Yes, but once the floor test is held, right, and you can't reverse the fact of the floor test. That's a factual event, an event. So once you allow the floor test to go on, and the floor test results in a removal of the government by virtue of a majority, then the matter is over.
So Dr. Singhvi said that the governor is not an angel, but what is the judgment will come, then what you will say?
No man can claim to be, or woman can claim to be an angel. So I don't know what Dr. Singhvi is saying. Nobody claims to be an angel. Everybody has some but governors go, when he meant that the governor is not an angel, it means governors are prone to making a mistake. But they are humans like everybody else. Judges make mistakes. Lawyers make lots of mistakes. So
So it's a big
So it is a big victory for the Shinde faction.
It is a very, very, very big win. But it was expected. Once you have a majority of that kind, it's very difficult. How can you ignore the democratic fact that majorities rule? So this was just playing out time. If you ask me, the other side was just playing out time, but they're entitled to move the courts. They have a right.
So the court has also issued notice on the larger questions raised in this petition with regard to the Speaker's power, the Governor's power, the disqualification issue.
Yeah.
What does this mean now that once these matters come up for hearing on the 11th?
Well, I mean, those questions will be gone into, but I think by then, perhaps the other side, I think, will lose interest in this matter. Today was really the main event. After this, it's like episode 12 of a very boring picture after this.
Just over, sir.
But sir, would this then have an impact? Because the court has said that the outcome of this floor test is subject to the court's final verdict.
Right,
what does that really mean?
I'll have to read that order properly because they've only said it in open court. But yes, I mean, I suppose the disqualification petition still stands. But the question is, you can't reverse a majority on the floor of the House as per the floor test which they've allowed to go on tomorrow. You can't reverse that. देखिए,
इस पूरे फैसले को आप कैसे देखते हो? कितनी बड़ी जीत मानते हैं आप?
देखिए, ये तो बहुत बड़ी जीत है, लेकिन और ये तो अपेक्षित था क्योंकि कानून हमारे फेवर में था, यानी शिंदे के गुट के फेवर में था, क्योंकि बहुमत तो उनके ही है और आखिर लोकशाही और डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिटिक्स, लेजिस्लेटिव पॉलिटिक्स मेजॉरिटी के आधार पे ही चलती है.
सर, लेकिन सबसे बड़ी बात है कि फ्लोर टेस्ट करवाएगा कौन? सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने फ्लोर टेस्ट का ऑर्डर
देखिए, गवर्नर ने तो फ्लोर टेस्ट एज पर गवर्नर्स ऑर्डर को कहा है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एज पर गवर्नर्स ऑर्डर कहा है और गवर्नर ने निर्देश दिया है चीफ मिनिस्टर को, सिटिंग चीफ मिनिस्टर को. तो फर्ज तो उनका है कि कल वो फ्लोर टेस्ट होल्ड करें, लेकिन यदि करेंगे कि नहीं, मुझे डाउट लगता है कि लास्ट स्टेटमेंट में उन्होंने कहा है कि शायद मैं रिजाइन त्यागपत्र दे दूंगा. Well, politically it means this government, if the numbers hold, will be voted out as we expect it to, because the number of people in Shinde's group, in Shinde's Shiv Sena, is much larger than the other sides, and there is an overwhelming majority. But we have to see which of the various parties get together.
Sir, just one last question. Nawab Malik and Anil Deshmukh have finally been given permission to go and attend the floor test. Does this make any difference whatsoever for numbers or for morale?
I don't know about morale. Morale, I mean, you'll have to see what their morale is after the verdict tomorrow, so I can't talk about their morale. I think their morale will be pretty shattered by today's verdict. So the victory about getting those two gentlemen to vote is not going to outweigh what has happened in court today.
Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Senior lawyer Mahesh Jetmalani there, who has been advising the BJP and the Shinde camp, speaking about how it is a victory and how they have the numbers. Meanwhile, news also coming in that the two leaders of the MVA, Nawab Malik and Anil Deshmukh, will be allowed to vote in the floor test tomorrow. Remember, they weren't allowed to vote in the MLC elections and even in the Rajya Sabha elections because they are in custody right now on various charges, but they will be allowed to vote tomorrow. I'm going to Danish Anand for a quick update on this. Danish, how much of a difference does this make and on what grounds have they been allowed?
Basically, a plea was filed by Nawab Malik and Anil Deshmukh, and they were seeking to allow them to vote in the floor test if there's any floor test. But just moments back, Supreme Court has clearly said that they will not intervene in the decision that the governor has taken, and the floor test will happen as per schedule in the Maharashtra Assembly tomorrow. And but Anil Deshmukh and Nawab Malik, previously the court did not allow them to vote in the MLC elections, but in this floor test, the ED and the government, they have conceded, and tomorrow both these MLAs will be allowed to vote in the floor test tomorrow, and they will be escorted by the security agencies. Once they cast their vote, they will be headed back to prison.
Thank you for that, Danish, with all the latest updates. But the big story really is in the next 3 minutes or so, we will be waiting and hoping to hear from Uddhav Thackeray. Will it be his last speech as Chief Minister? Will he want to bow out before the floor test is really held? And Mr. Memon, if Mr. Uddhav Thackeray does come in a few minutes and then resigns, who conducts the floor test? Because the governor's letter very clearly asks him to conduct the floor test.
Just add one or two things. Number one is that subject to the outcome of disqualification petition is meaningless, because you see, tomorrow almost it's a foregone conclusion that the government would fall. Once the government falls, the speaker will change. The deputy speaker will no more be there, who has issued the show cause notices. So everything becomes infructuous and meaningless. Nothing survives. Secondly, you spoke about those two MLAs, our NCP MLAs who are in prison. You see, their casting vote or their not casting the vote is not going to change the scenario, because the gap is too wide. If the Shinde group, along with the entire 106 BJP men and many other independents who are always moving towards the party in power or the combination in power, are also going to vote against the Sena government. And therefore, with Nawab Malik and Anil Deshmukh coming to cast vote, it is not going to alter the fate of Uddhav Thackeray. I hope that Mr. Thackeray, in a very sentimental and gentlemanly way, quits with dignity. And that is all depending upon how he would be advised by Mr. Sharad Pawar, who is very close to him, how he would be advised by his party colleagues and his family, his wife Reshmi. Therefore, we will have to just wait for a couple of minutes, Tamanna, but I think we will know that the fate of his chief ministership is barely for less than 24 hours now.
The question now over here is that how will the floor test then be conducted tomorrow if Mr. Thackeray does end up resigning? Yes, Amitabh wants to come in on that.
The question of a floor test does not arise if Uddhav Thackeray resigns today.
Then what happens?
He will just submit his resignation to the governor, and that's the end of it.
So
then he concedes that he does not have the majority.
So then the governor calls on the leader of opposition to form a government. Yes. Does Mr. Fadnavis then have to undergo a floor test?
Yes, he will then probably explore other avenues of forming the government and might call on Devendra Fadnavis and ask him to, if he has the numbers and if he agrees, to prove his majority by a certain date.
Okay. So, Mr. Memon, now, an interesting comment that came in from Mr. Jethmalani is that after all of this, everything else that will follow is like a very boring 12-part episode of a series because the climax is done. Is that how you see it?
The whole story is over. Now, with the floor test going to go on at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, and people from both sides, this faction and that faction, they all know what is going to be the fate of floor test. And as our friend has rightly said, that once Uddhav chooses the course of quitting with grace to avoid the defeat on the floor of the House, which very often political leaders do, which I think he may also in all probability do, then in that event, it is the right of the largest single political party from the opposition to be invited by the governor. There will be nothing wrong in that. And as a matter of fact, we find from the conduct of the governor for the last quite some time that he has been also supporting BJP latently, if not very patently. But then his conduct has been so very clear, as I knew that even COVID or anything of that, he rushed from hospital to Raj Bhavan, and then without loss of even a day.
Amitabh Tewari joining me right now for a quick update on this story. So, Amitabh, what is next? Basically, Devendra Fadnavis takes over?
I mean, yeah, the governor now, or rather, Uddhav first will submit his resignation to the governor. And the governor will then explore the possibilities of formation of the government. And since BJP is the single largest party in the state assembly, he could invite him to form the government and ask him to prove his majority by a certain date. So, in fact, I would say that the mandate of the public ultimately is getting honored after 2.5 years. And instead of a BJP plus Sena, you now have sort of a BJP plus Shiv Sena who will be going to form the government in Maharashtra.
All right, we'll take a very short break.